So today we're going to talk about David Hawkins' letting go technique. We're going to explain it in a way that you can take action on it because it's really, really powerful. I coach professional athletes, and I can tell you one of the top 3 skills that I teach them is letting go, especially in competition. Think about it. In life, we have some time to let things go, but in competition, you've got no time. You've got to go, so you've got to let go. Didn't plan on that rhyming, but it kind of did. But I mean, we're talking seconds, right? Like if you're a motocross racer, a supercross racer, you literally have maybe 2-3 seconds max where you have to let something go that just happened in the turn before. But in life, it's interesting because letting go is something that sometimes we don't do for years. And I'll even share a personal story with you about something I let go and how powerful it was for me. So I got a couple notes on this too, because I've been listening to David Hawkins' audiobook, and it's very powerful. There are so many powerful points. Let's get started on a few of them. So one of the ones that I love is that you are not your feelings. So you are not your feelings. Think about it for a moment. We know that feelings are fleeting, and we know that feelings or emotions are basically just energy in motion. And I think one of the things that David Hawkins wants us to understand is that feelings, whether good or bad, that's how some people will label them. I choose to label them as lower vibe or higher vibe. And I think Mr. Hawkins or Dr. Hawkins tends to go in that direction as well with the levels of consciousness. But when we look at these emotions, they're always trying to bring our awareness to them so that we can reflect and learn. And so he often states how if we don't feel those feelings, in a way, we're kind of letting a signal from the universe, signal from source, signal from God, whatever you want to call it. There's a signal being sent to us, but we're not willing to receive it. And so instead of taking an emotion and pushing it to the side, which would be called repression or suppression, that act he recommends you don't do, but you sit with the feeling and you observe the feeling. So he mentions that consider the feeling, just to make sure I get this right. Thoughts, he moves it towards thoughts. Thoughts are like goldfish and we are the water. So what he means by that is when we have this feeling, what we try to do is we try to rationalize it and say, why am I feeling this way? But where one of our errors is that we just need to observe it. We don't need to think through and rationalize it. Just let it exist, observe it, be aware of it, maybe learn from it. But if we tend to label it or rationalize it too much, then we start to sit with it. And then that feeling creates another thought, creates more of the same feeling, and then you get into almost like this little vortex. So he always mentions how the real you will witness and be the observer. So whenever you have that feeling in your body, try to step out from it and just observe it and don't fight or resist it. He's big on the resistance part. There's no forcing it out. It's, when he talks about power versus force, the power is really in the observance of that feeling. So really huge principle there. And boy, I'll tell you, and we're going to talk more about it, but this for me in the last 2 months has been the most powerful thing that I've done, is learn how to let go. And the other thing too is sometimes, for example, I'll go into this example now. When I had something go wrong to me back in the day, where I had an injury, it was a very odd injury where I wanted to be a professional motorcycle racer, and with your left foot, you shift up. And so of all the injuries I could have had, whether it's a broken bone, broken back, broken spine, broken clavicle, the only injury I succumbed to was my left foot was paralyzed, so it does not go up. So I have what's called drop foot. So that's how you shift a motorcycle. So here it is, as a 15-year-old kid, I came to the conclusion that this meant that there was no such thing as God. Because if there was a God, why would you take the biggest dream away from me? This is my only number one dream. And of all the things you could have done to me, you took the one thing away from me that guaranteed that there's no way I could succeed, because I can't shift a motorcycle. And so for over 10, 15 years, I had a lot of anger inside me, a lot of resentment, um, just a lot of anger. And sometimes I didn't really quite know where that came from. But then when I reflected, I realized that I had suppressed that emotion and that pain. And I'm like, dude, you need to let that go. And so, and not just with David Hawkins' work, but with some of my other work in learning about myself and personal growth, personal development, I said to myself, it happened. Like, I've literally been trapped in this one event that happened 30 plus years ago, and then just reliving the same pain of it. It's almost like the event I might as well get in the accident every single day, because other than the physical pain, the emotional pain is almost the same. It might be diminished a hair, but either way, it still keeps coming up. And so for all these years, you keep reliving that emotion, that pain. But so this is a different example where you would not just observe that and let it go and let it stay. That you would accept it, realize that, hey, there's nothing I can do about this event. And the label, I mislabeled that event, that experience in my life, and I labeled it with a there is no God, like a very intense emotion, And so me being able to let that go has been a huge weight off my shoulders. And so when we talk about, pain and letting go, we also have to realize this is that a lot of times, and Dr. Hawkins says this, is all feelings are survival based. And I just really feel that that's a huge thing to remember, because oftentimes when we react instead of respond to something someone says, it's almost as if we feel like we're being attacked. And sometimes we use that term like, oh, I feel like I'm being attacked. Have you ever thought about the meaning behind actually saying that? Because if you feel like you're being attacked, I know what people mean. They mean like a personal attack. But truth be told, if you are triggering the same parts of the body as if you were back in the Neanderthal days being attacked by a saber-tooth tiger, you can imagine that fight or flight response and that intensity of response and emotion to someone who's saying something to you, and how you could easily react out of anger and aggression, or even go the opposite way and just completely lock up and lock down, fight or flight, right? So really powerful thing. Emotions are just so powerful. So one of the things that I also wanted to finish with is Dr. Hawkins talks about suppression, which is conscious. He also talks about repression, which is unconscious. And then he talks about expression, which is like the release. And one of the points that he makes, which I completely agree with, is a lot of disease and a lot of the problems that we all have in our mental health are because we repress these feelings. And so one of the things that Dr. Hawkins, I feel, is trying to really truly reveal to us is, if you have something that happened, you have an event, and then you have the emotion that's attached to it. Observe it, look at it, but if you repress it and say, I can't, the pain is too great, the humiliation, the guilt, the embarrassment, all those painful emotions that kind of tag along, almost kind of like, they kind of are like supporting that other emotion. Like, let's say an event happens, you have that one emotion, that one core emotion, whether it's, humiliation, pain, or whatever happened. There's multiple other emotions attached to it as well that are lower vibe. And I'm telling you, the guilt, the shame, and the embarrassment, that holds us back, because you don't want to go back and let that feeling, that emotion exist, because of all those other things that are low vibe attached to it. And they just make you feel, they make you feel horrible, right? And so you say, hey, I don't want to feel this way. And so you suppress it, repress it, put it to the side, pack it under a blanket, put it in storage, put it back in the closet, right? If you just let those feelings happen and you observe them, I sometimes even like to think about the feeling I have, and I almost envision it like being in my hand. And sometimes it's so wild how, if it's a strong emotion, I can actually feel the weight. It's almost like I feel like 10, 15, 20, 30 pounds actually in my hand, even though there's nothing in 3D space really there. But that gives me just a sense of, okay, I can manage it. I can look at this experience in different ways. I can try to rationalize it, but instead I'd rather just recognize it, learn, observe, accept, surrender, and let go. My name is Dr. Jay Kavanaugh of thevibemindset.com. I hope you got a little bit from this explanation. I know it's a very tricky concept in a way because it's so simple. It's like, oh, just let go. And you're like, well, how come I can't do it? Well, just like anything, until you do it or focus your attention on it and catch yourself, having that awareness, that consciousness to know what's happening, it's going to take time. So don't fight it, embrace it, put in the time, put in the effort, because this is a skill that is like the gift that keeps giving. And there's so many smaller opportunities throughout your day to actually let go. So look for those opportunities when they come. If someone cuts you off on the highway, if someone says something horrible to you, if someone has some sort of act of aggression towards you, perfect opportunity to practice this skill so it becomes a habit and it becomes automated. And letting go becomes a part of who you are and a part of your skill set. So go check out thevibemindset.com, and we've got 2 other videos up here if you want to check them out. And thank you so very much for your time and attention. It's greatly appreciated.